Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back. Welcome back to the BirthFit podcast. And I am your host, Dr. Lindsay Matthews, can too. And I was trying to look up what episode number this is. We just keep rolling, huh? Um, Today we're talking about sleep, and this is episode number 274. Before I go any further, I want to remind you to look at the show notes. Inside the show notes, you will find a discount for a free month inside the BirthFit community membership. This is a place for mamas, practitioners, coaches, all to have a seat at the table. There are weekly videos delivered to your inbox. So just think, new content drops each week. They could be specific content like sleep, like we're talking about today. They could be movement videos. And then also guest speakers, live podcast recordings. You have the opportunity to attend those. But the coolest thing is, well, there's actually a lot of cool things. I would say one of the cool features is the office hours that is at the end of the month. And this is where you show up live, ask questions, throw your own wisdom in the pot, and share with all of those other women that are present. The other cool thing is we have a resource library. So all the videos that you're receiving, all the content that's being dropped each week, it is housed inside the resource library, which is constantly growing. And we cover things from every part of the seven pillar framework, from sun, sleep, fitness, nutrition, mindset, community, and spirituality. Because we want you to cultivate a practice inside each of those pillars. And when you cultivate a practice inside each of those pillars, you show up with more vitality. You show up from a more nourished, resourced, adaptable place for your clients. If you're a coach, if you're a practitioner, you know how important that is. All right, so moving on to today, episode number 274. We are chatting about sleep. And this is like a sneak peek of a bit of content that's inside the BirthFit certification. So sleep is one of our pillars. And we talk about sleep from like the sleep biology to how important the nervous system is to there's a quantum lens that we go into, and so on and so on. But what I want to talk to you about, right, is that the sleep architect. So like one basic sleep 101. And we're not going to get too far in this, right? I promised you these episodes are going to be short and sweet and to the point. But light sleep, we'll just call it light sleep. This is the transition into sleep, where you're easily awakened, and it accounts for about 5% of total sleep. Then you have true sleep, or stage two. This is where your heart rate slows, your body temperature drops, memory consolidation begins, and this is about 45% of your total sleep. Excuse me, let me grab some water. All right, then we start getting into stage three, like the deep sleep, and then REM, even dream sleep. But deep sleep, stage three, is slow wave sleep, physical repair, immune function. Um, think about this as like when you're talking nervous system, we have to have health, growth, or restoration. Um, we have to feel safe in order to get to that place of healing to happen. And that primarily happens with sleep. And so this, you have to get to that deep sleep for this to happen. And then you get into dream sleep, the rapid eye movement, right? REM, emotional regulation, memory integration, brain restoration. Both of these deep sleeps are about 25%. So, adults, we operate on 90-minute cycles, and we need about 4 to 6 cycles per night to, let's say, function optimally. Um, and it's real like if you're in your preconception chapter and you're listening to this, optimizing your sleep habits, your patterns, your environment, all that is going to be key. Because shifting into the perinatal timeline, um, there's distinct phases throughout the motherhood transition, with its own sleep biology. And our body's doing these things on purpose for us. Like nothing is wrong. And that's what I try to communicate across the sleep lesson inside of the BirthFit certification is, for instance, fragmented sleep in the fourth trimester is not something to fix. That's a biological necessity. That is optimization. And join us in the BirthFit certification to learn more, obviously, but just know that like there's nothing wrong with you. And when you start coaching from that lens, from that perspective, when you start showing up as a doctor of chiropractic, as a physical therapist, like you're using that lens, there's nothing to be fixed. You're optimizing within the season you're in inside of that motherhood transition. So inside the first trimester, it's absolutely normal for that progesterone to surge and extreme sleepiness to happen. I know for me, I did not get much nausea or morning sickness, but I really was fatigued. I wanted to nap all day, and it made complete sense to me that total sleep time increased for me. Like I was used to about 8-ish, 9-ish hours. I went to like 10 hours of sleep, maybe sometimes 11 hours of sleep a day. You can have vivid dreams during this chapter. Frequent urination can also happen, which will disrupt sleep a little bit, but just know your kidneys are ramping up. You get into the second trimester, right, which is like the honeymoon trimester, and sleep quality often improves, just like your feelings, your well-being overall, right? Like we're ready to work out again, we're grooving, we feel good, we got a little baby bump, like we're feeling really good. Some things that might show up that might affect sleep, restless leg syndrome, heartburn, round ligament pain, those are things like if they show up, if things are showing up and they're bothering your sleep in this chapter and you're pregnant, address those. Don't let them linger. That's your body's way of communicating to you. And then in the third trimester, deep sleep significantly increases. Think of it as your body putting in some practice reps. Your body's rehearsing. How nice for that fourth trimester. Sleep efficiency drops to about 75%. But literally, your body's prepping you. All right, so a little bit about progesterone in that first trimester. It's going to rise about ten times. Um, that's wild, right? Like sleeping 10 to 12 hours a day is not lazy in that first trimester. It's absolutely necessary. It's normal. It's part of the hormonal shift. Let's honor it. Do not demonize it. Um, Progesterone has those sedative properties, right? It's going to help bind GABA receptors. So we get into this a little more in the certification. We talk about progesterone, allopregnanolone, and the GABA, and I'll just leave it at that. But those are like that's super important for relaxation and yeah, having that sleep-like environment. Um, One thing I'll say, progesterone drops to near zero within almost 24 hours of birth. And then you combine that with newborn wake-ups, which are biologically normal and optimal. That's like a little a pot brewing for mood disruption. It's not weakness, it's just something to be aware of. Um, yeah, so just know that. And that's why it's important to have, I would say, resources if you're preparing for postpartum, if you're helping women prepare for postpartum. This is why it's so important to have postpartum resources set up. Um, the other thing I'll say about cultivating sleep environments and honoring your circadian rhythm and getting that dialed in is because melatonin and oxytocin have a synergistic relationship. Melatonin, you need to cultivate it during the day. So you have to have um what's the best word? Like an appropriate level of outside sunlight time in your naked eyeballs on your body so that you can harvest melatonin. And they peak at night. Melatonin and oxytocin peak at night. And this is by design. This is like, think about it. This is why so many labors start at night and why they take off during the night. The fetus receives melatonin across the placenta, and melatonin rises in the third trimester, and it uses it to set its own circadian clock. So babies are not born with a set circadian rhythm, right? Like we have to show them this. And this starts as early as the third trimester. So evening light hygiene in the third trimester is a developmental intervention. It's not just a sleep tip I'm trying to help you out with. Melatonin receptors are densely expressed in the uterine myometrium. Melatonin directly enhances oxytocin receptors, excuse me, sensitivity, making the uterine contractions stronger and more coordinated, just as I mentioned. So, if you're working with a client and you're a doula, dim lighting. Hello. Think about this. It's too common for me to hear about women, oh, they're laboring at home, everything was going great. And then they got to the hospital and it stalled. Well, hello, bright lights, hello, loud noises. That is not an environment to support melatonin and oxytocin. So if you transition to a birth center or a hospital, think about getting the lights as dim as possible, as quickly as possible, and protecting what would be a sleep environment, honoring that sleep environment. Um, Knowing that connection, like the melatonin oxytocin connection, honoring circadian rhythm, and then throwing the nervous system in there, where your nervous system needs to feel safe, right, in order to fall asleep into that deep sleep. It also needs to feel safe to birth a baby, right? So you've got to have a regulated nervous system. And this is some of the stuff where like I love BirthFit, right? Because this is where science meets hippie. This is the ancient wisdom meets modern technology today. Um, so speaking of modern technology, um, a lot of women are on their devices all day. They've got chronic stress, and that's just going to raise cortisol. Cortisol is already going to rise during pregnancy because it's essential for the fetal lung development, immune development, and even the birth process. But when there's too much of it, like there's a fine balance that you have to find. When there's too much of it, it's going to affect maternal sleep. It's also going to negatively impact labor, right? If you're like too wired and tired, like that's not good. So think like get some tabs on this. Get some handles on this, wired and tired. The chronic stress before pregnancy if you can, during pregnancy at the latest. Like poor sleep is going to elevate your cortisol. High cortisol, wired and tired state, difficulty falling asleep again. So it's a vicious cycle. And this is why I say, especially if you can regulate your circadian rhythm, support regulation in your nervous system, that's going to carry you throughout pregnancy and throughout postpartum. Because postpartum, let's talk about that real quick. Um, like the phrase sleep when baby sleep is only halfway right. It's missing a lot. But postpartum, infant night wakes our biology, and it crushes my soul a little bit whenever people are like, I'm gonna sleep train or I'm gonna not night nurse. Like, absolutely, it is my strong opinion that you need to nurse through the night, at least for the first 10 to 12 months. Infant night waking is an evolution, like it's absolutely evolutionary biology. And when you understand this, I think even like it shifted my perspective. Like, I love sleep. I built my days around my sleep habits. And then when baby came, it's like, it's not about my sleep. It's about my regulated nervous system, honoring my nervous system so that I can show up for my little one and remind her that she's safe, remind her that mama's right here. Infant night waking is not a problem to solve. It's a biology to understand and support. One thing we talk about inside the certification is polyphasic sleep. And we talk about this study that the Navy did and how um, there was shift work and they broke it up. It was like 6 hours on, 6 hours off versus 3 hours on, 9 hours off. And basically that was so that one was not doing nights while the other was doing days. It was to optimize the circadian rhythm. And what they found was 3 to 5 hour sleep blocks with brief awakenings do not destroy performance when the circadian rhythm is protected. The key here is to anchor your circadian rhythm. And what I mean by that is when you have a sleepless night, get outside immediately the next morning with the sunrise. And I would do this with Vera. Like if we had a wonky night between that 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. time slot, we would go outside and that's where our nursing session would happen. I would have my tea or my bone broth outside. We would sit there, I would nurse her, and we'd reset. We would have as much of our skin receiving the sun as possible. This one act re-anchors cortisol, melatonin, and the entire hormonal cascade for the day. It's absolutely a non-negotiable in my opinion. The morning light anchors the infant as well. So just think, you're resetting your circadian rhythm for the day, and you're helping to show baby her circadian rhythm. I think this is why, with my situation, I think Vera was able to tell the difference between night and day pretty quickly, like 6 to 8 weeks postpartum of life. And she was born, for those of you that don't know, she was born 4 weeks early. And I had her on my back porch under the stars, the bright stars in Wimberley, Texas. And Wimberley, for those of you that have never been to Wimberley, Texas, they're a little town that protects the dark sky. So there's not a ton of streetlights, which I love. Okay, so anyways, that's a little overview of what some of the lessons are inside of the BirthFit certification on sleep. I just wanted to give you something to walk away with today. I know there's lots of tips in there. If you have any questions, let us know. Be sure to check out the show notes for the discount code for a free month inside the BirthFit community membership. One thing I did not mention earlier is when you are a community member, you also get 40% off all of the training programs. So that's a huge deal. All right, enrollment is open for the BirthFit certification fall cohort. Get in there. We kick off live calls September, the first week in September. All right, y'all, have a great week. Talk to you soon.